Welcome to the Easy Answer Podcast. I'm Brandy, plant-based chef.
And I'm Vonanise, plant-based adjacent.
On this podcast, we explore thought-provoking conversations around food
and simple ways to stay healthy in this crazy world.
Hey Vaughn, how you doing?
Hey Brandy, how are you?
I'm good. What did you eat today?
Well, I haven't eaten yet. I planned on having half a cantaloupe for breakfast. But it's like intermittent fasting time, so you like eat,
Got it.
A window.
Got it. So you're eating limited food by choice, but there's some people out here who don't necessarily have enough food to eat. How do we feel about America being one of the richest countries in the world and people still not being able to have adequate food?
I mean, I used to work at a school that was in the Hunts Point section of the Bronx, and that even though that's the port that they bring food into in the Bronx, so insane. That was the most food insecure area of the Bronx. And it was really sad to have that. You have the statistic in the back of your head, and you know that when you work there. And you could definitely feel it, and there were a lot of companies that would come in and try to offer support to the parents in that area. But when you were in that area, it wasn't like there were a ton of options and places where you could go to get something to eat over lunch. And one of the places that I would go to get coffee, not like sometimes I would get breakfast, McDonald's. I did go to the McDonald's in that area. There's always a McDonald's in the hood. Always.
Yeah, I mean, there's a doc. I can't remember. I've read so much literature on McDonald's and their evil ways. From how evil ways, how they market, to how they handle their food, to how they treat some of their minority franchisees. So it's really hard to know exactly where I got this information from, but like McDonald's in the hood makes all the sense in the world. It's cheap, and they get the kids when they're young to pretty much annoy the parents to buy food from there, right? So I'm tired. I'm just coming home from work. My child's been looking at these commercials with this clown on it talking about how good this food is, and then I can go and buy my child a $2 meal in a box that's all colorful.
It's not $2. See,
it was $2. It was okay, $2.49 in a box. Okay, and inside of that box there is a burger.
Why do you go so extreme, and then I have to defend McDonald's, and I don't want to defend McDonald's, like, because you're so extreme about it.
Okay. and a little toy, right? That was what it was. I mean, recently they've added, I think, some apple slices because they're trying to be healthy and all. And okay, maybe it's what, $4 now? Maybe it's $3.99. I haven't been to McDonald's since it was $1.
$6 for a Happy Meal or $7.
No way. No way. Happy Meals are $6?
Yes, it is.
It's not even real food. Like, that's insane. That wow, that's crazy. And people say, why people say fast food is cheap?
It's not cheap. You understand? It's not cheap. It's $6 for a Happy Meal. They do have the dollar menu, but in New York City, it's not $1. It's always like $1.50 because we live in a high tax bracket area. It's very expensive to live in New York City. So it's not cheap to go to McDonald's. It's not.
Oh, but they still call it the dollar menu, so they charge you $1.50, but they call it the dollar menu.
Yeah, like $1.52, $1.89.
Why not just change it to like the discount food menu so that it's more accurate?
I mean, now we're doing their marketing. I don't know why they do that. However, it's not cheap the way that you're thinking that it's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But
I know fast food isn't cheap. Yeah.
I mean, I just think that, okay, Again, you're making me say it, so I'm going to say it again. I went to Howard University, and
Oh, yeah, it was my Howard University. We need to get some kickback, okay? You guys, applications start going up. Send the Easy Answer podcast. Something we need. Something. We'll do Easy Answer podcast scholarship for Howard University
but
students.
listen, I'm telling you that at my school, there's a McDonald's that was one of the richest McDonald's in the DC area, and it was owned by a Black man when I went there. I'm not sure if it's changed hands. I'm not sure if it's still open, because after you left the club, DC Live, yes, I'm dating myself, you would go to that McDonald's that was like right next door to like my dorm, the Towers dorm, you know? And so when the man went on Squawk on the Street on CSNBC to say that McDonald's has created more Black millionaires than a lot of other companies, that is not a lie. They have created a lot of Black millionaires because it was like easy to, like back in the 80s or whatever, it was easier to become a franchisee of McDonald's than a lot of other companies. Like, the buy-in wasn't so bad, and it was such a name. It was such a recognizable name.
I mean, they had amazing real, because everybody else says McDonald's isn't a burger company; it's a real estate company.
It's a real estate company, right?
Yeah. They have locations all over the place. They have amazing marketing. They've done a ton of research to make sure that their colors do exactly what they're supposed to do to get you excited about food, and they make food cheap, quote unquote, right? Cheaper than I guess what it would be, and it is consistent across the board. You can go pretty much to any place and get that consistent thing. But is that food though? Like, how often have you made a dish and it comes out exactly the same way that you made it before?
Listen, I'm not arguing with you on whether or not McDonald's whether their food is healthy. Their food's not healthy. All right.
Can we even call it food?
It's food. It's just not healthy food.
But is it food?
Is it food? It's food.
I got to reference the dictionary. I'm gonna reference the
really.
I'm when it comes to words, I got to check out.
Let me get some water. I mean, I think that McDonald's is food.
Now listen to this. Listen to the definition of food. Any nutritious substance that people or animals eat or drink, or that plants absorb in order to maintain life and growth. We can't classify
not food, Brandy. Cake's not food.
Say it again.
So cake is not food.
Any nutritious substance that people or animals eat or drink, or that plants absorb in order to maintain life and growth.
So it's food, all right? By the definition that you've read, McDonald's is food.
McDonald's is not food. It's not a nutritious substance.
McDonald's is food, all right? There are people who eat McDonald's. There are franchisees, owners who would be very offended by that statement. And it's food, all right? It's not. Listen, we're not questioning whether or not McDonald's is food. It's food. All right. Did you see the documentary? Did you see the film that they made about the person who started McDonald's? It was a really good film.
What was it called? McMillions or something?
No, McMillions is about the one.
Founder. Right.
The founder.
Founder, right?
Yeah.
I didn't finish it, but I did start it.
It was really good. I saw it and I really loved it. The way that, McDonald's was started as a very small company by two brothers. And then this man who was like a serial entrepreneur, he sold things door to door. He tasted their food and really loved it. And he partnered with them, and then he basically shut them out the business and found a way to do the factory, to make the burgers like it's, we're on a factory line.
Yeah, like the what do you call it? The Henry Ford approach to
Yeah, the Henry Ford approach to making the burgers, and then they turned that into, because America's a capitalist society. This wasn't in the movie, but once I saw, like, Food Inc., you saw that the beef in this country became, they were all gearing towards McDonald's and hamburgers because they were the hugest beef consumers in the country. And it just shows you that 100% capitalism is never a good idea. We need to,
especially as it relates to
food. As it relates to food, it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
We need stricter regulations for the FDA. That's what I think. So we can't say McDonald's. I mean, it's food. I try not to eat it because it's not, but I'm not going to lie. If you catch me in a bind, I will go get egg McMuffin with eggs, the little English muffin, and I think they have delicious coffee. All right.
Is that? But that was one of their attempts to rebrand the whole McCoffee thing. So of course, there was a whole decade of taking down McDonald's. Right? We have documentaries about people eat McDonald's for 30 days and their health kind of just fall into the wayside. Right? We had Fast Food Nation, which was a book that went deep into the workings of McDonald's and their effect of the food system and the food supply chain because of those things. And so what do businesses do? They want to sustain their profit, right? So they rebranded themselves and they became like McCoffee. So they decided to follow Starbucks, who was having a lot of success in that arena. Go for coffee, make it cheap, make it simple. And in some markets, they even tried to go super healthy, like quinoa salad. Didn't really land well because no one is going to McDonald's for that. So yeah,
that's true. And then like now in a Happy Meal, you could get you could get like
slices, right?
You could get apple slices. You could get whole milk. You could get milk, water. Instead of a drink. I mean, listen. I'm not trying to come for McDonald's. That's the hard entity to take on. Brandy, you vegan chef, you could do it. All right. So
I'm not trying to come. I'm just saying what it is. We gotta be. I just read definitions and let them land where they land. They better not come for the Easy Answer podcast. We're not coming for y'all. We just read definitions. That's it.
Okay. I think that McDonald's is food. I just think that it's not healthy food. You understand? Like, it's not healthy. And if people want to have a little treat every once in a while and have, like a McDonald's apple pie, who am I to stop you?
So I definitely want to stop our conversation and bring in our guests about this because we definitely want to bring Rashida back to the Easy Answer podcast to have this conversation about food versus non-food. So we're going to bring her in.
Hey, Rashida.
Hey, Rashida. Welcome back.
Hi, Brandy. Hi, Vaughn. Nice to be back.
Hello.
Yeah. So you've heard our opening conversation about McDonald's being classified as food. Knowing your background, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say about this.
Yeah. Okay. So McDonald's doesn't sell food. Part of the definition of food is something that nourishes the body. It has to provide nutrients. McDonald's gives you filler. It is not nourishing, so it's not food. It does not meet the definition of food. There's very little at McDonald's, even the apple slices in the Happy Meal. Now, last time you sliced an apple, were you able to put that in a little baggie and take that somewhere and that was okay to eat later? I mean, we have to wonder exactly how what was food is being packaged to pass as something that is still nourishing and still looks fresh 5-10 hours later, next day, not food.
Yeah, I mean,
y'all are so controversial.
No, we're not controversial. We just take definitions and mash them up. So yeah, we opened up this conversation because we really wanted to have a conversation around just like food sovereignty and how hard it is for people to get food and why is that the case?
Well, I love that Vaughn spoke about that juxtaposition between Hunts Point being the biggest port of entry for food, and that also the most food insecure area of the Bronx. Because from what I've learned over years of research and study in that area, really the problem is not food in particular, is the distribution system of food. There are so many weird juxtapositions like that in the world, like countries where they're importing and exporting the same amount of milk. There's a sad story about some place in Fiji that was like a fishing village, and they would get, they would well nourished with their own fishing and their own fisheries, and then suddenly some big supermarket came and opened up, and now they're all eating canned tuna, and the fishing industry has died. Like, and then their health is being affected as a result. So that is a distribution issue, because food has shifted from being a God-given birthright to a commodity. Also, land use and land access. I once did, in part of my Really Nourished work, I did a lot of YouTube, and one of the videos I put out, I studied why is it that Black and Latino people, women, have higher incidence of diabetes and heart disease than other races. And I started to look at the great migration that happened between the 30s and the 60s of Black people when they all like left the South and came to the North. So what they did is they left their land where they used to grow their food. They had land, so they had access to better food because they could produce it themselves. And they came into urban areas where they didn't have land anymore. So they were basically a captive audience for whatever food distribution wanted to put itself in there. So they had bodegas to buy from, and then fast food became prevalent. And so now you have a phenomenon that is not just food deserts. There's also a thing called food swamps, where there are studies that show you the percentage of fast food and fast non-food, right? And how people's access to that is greater than access to fresh, wholesome, nourishing food. And so there's an imbalance there, and you start to see the health outcomes show the effects of that on the populations. It's more people of color.
Mm-hmm. So, well, one thing that COVID definitely has sparked, or there's like a renaissance of people growing food again, which is, I think, a really cool thing, and it really did bring.
I'm even growing basil in my house. Girl, basil.
Nice.
Miss, I eat McDonald's and muffins every now and again.
I didn't say that I eat it every day. I said I might.
You can put a piece of basil on the McMuffin. Oh God.
That's how rumors get started. I'm not going to turn my nose up to McDonald's because I do drink their coffee. Like, I think the coffee is delicious, and I will have, an apple pie every once in a while, and an egg McMuffin, brandy plant candy. All right.
Coffee is delicious. Delicious. I love the apple pie. I used to love the apple pie before they started baking it. They used to fry apple pie and put it into a green box. They started baking it and put it into a red box.
Oh, I remember that. Yes.
But they used to fry it in the same thing like the French fry oil.
No, I'm not gonna sit in that way. When I have fond memories of McDonald's, I'm not gonna sit here and act like the pancakes weren't good, that I enjoyed them in my mouth. But once I evolved and I knew, like, what food was versus what food wasn't. And for me, initially, my anti-McDonald's, well, not anti-McDonald's, I don't want to go on record. Well, I guess the anti-McDonald's movement, or just like it was wrapped into a whole concept around anybody who wasn't not only making food that was good, that affected the health of communities, but also the processes that got us the food. So that was one of the things that really bothered me about McDonald's, was that they had such an opportunity to be so influential in how we get food and how food ethics could be established by because of their buying power, because ultimately they're a business. So I'm not going to take away the fact that they have a bottom line that they're trying to sustain. They have shareholders that they're trying to appeal to. It is a business, but there is a way for you to do business and do business ethically. And they really decided that they weren't going to do that. And they have so much influence over people's lives and something that's as important as food, right? We all
Yes,
to
that's
eat.
true.
So that
And
was
the Black community is 20% of their,
one
like
of
one
your
fifth of their
revenue comes
is
from
from the Black community.
Black people.
Yeah, 1/5. That's a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, have some freaking integrity. You got all that stuff. You feeding us chicken that's poorly farmed. You feeding us French fries that have perfume in them because you decided to stop cooking your fries in lard and you didn't want your lard to the vegetarians came for you in India and told you that we didn't know that these French fries had meat in them because you guys are making them in lard, and their response to them was, we never claimed our French fries were vegetarian. Why should I have to question if your French fries are vegetarian? They're potatoes.
Yeah, but
Facts.
you fry the potato and the oil that you use, I mean, now that we know what it takes to make food, like you're the one who got me like, please try to go to a restaurant with Brandy. She'll be like, what do you cook this in? When do you cook that? What do you She'll dissect everything, And so you can't make an assumption that, I mean, she ate somewhere and then they rendered something with pork and it made her sick. You can't make the assumption that all the ingredients are going to be vegan,
Or not even a vegan, but in
Nevertheless.
alignment with natural process.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you go to a restaurant that is a vegan.
Yeah, McDonald's. So if they had a problem in India, that was a cultural insensitivity problem. Hindus are vegetarians. So if you're going into a person's country, you need to know about their culture, and then you have to cater your menu to them. I mean, McDonald's actually is different in different countries. I saw a beer in McDonald's in Spain. They have something called French fry sauce in McDonald's in the Netherlands. There's nothing you get in the United States, but those are those cultures. So, I mean, like in Trinidad, half the population here is Hindu. And so you see a lot of vegetarian street food, because that's just how it is here. Now, if McDonald's want to come here, which they are here somewhere, I don't know, but they're here, they would have had to take that into consideration. That's just normal.
That's true.
And the fact that they didn't is bad poor form.
I mean, my problem with all these stories is just that these people just acting like they just found out because of the pandemic that people were food insecure. We knew that people were food insecure, because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let you know people were food insecure because you had to sit home and you had to be inundated with stories, and they had a captive audience about children who weren't getting food because the school was responsible. The school was responsible for lunch, so they weren't getting lunch. A school should never be responsible for feeding a child. That's a problem that people in America were okay with that, until they couldn't be okay with it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the beauty of the pandemic. If we find a silver lining, it really forced everybody to sit down, be quiet, and look at the realities that are in front of us personally and on a larger social scale.
Definitely.
Because I mean, like you say, food insecurity is not new. It didn't show up in 2020.
Yes,
sorry.
But from what I could see is that there were new people showing up at food pantries who never went there before.
That
People
is
in higher income brackets were showing up. So now is a problem. When the poor, when we poor folk didn't have, food, oh well, that's just part of being poor. But now that more people were, new people, so now it became highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
But see, this is the thing. Like New York is a place that's where we live. It's really expensive. You should not have to
Mm-hmm.
work 12 hours in a day to be able to afford rent, to be able to afford to live.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't have two jobs, you can't afford your rent. That's unacceptable, And I think that that's what the pandemic highlighted, And I think that
Mm-hmm.
even back to the McDonald's stories where black franchise people, like black franchisee owners were suing them. They were like, we're not, we're seeing less money for us. There's less opportunity for us, It's
Mm-hmm.
just like if a black woman makes 48 cents on the dollar to a white man, and we're in a pandemic, so she had to have a full-time and a part-time job. If her part-time job is in retail or someplace where she can't get to, now all she has is just one check, That's
Mm-hmm.
not acceptable. People who work every day should be able to afford food, water, shelter. And that's the
That's
problem.
what the Bible
That we were
says.
okay as a society with that. We were okay with that.
Hmm.
And then some people would say, but then you have a choice to where you go to live, right? Like living in New York is a choice. You can go somewhere where you make enough money to buy food, live somewhere, and have, I think we said health. I think that's what the other thing that we said. So like the New York is a choice to come here and take that gamble of, seeing what opportunities this city can
But the
bring you.
people who we're talking about, you and I both know those people who were born here that probably don't know how to drive because they're New Yorkers. And if you move somewhere out of a major metropolitan city, you're going to have to know how to drive. You
They have
understand?
schools for that.
They have what?
Schools for that.
Yeah, so they don't know how to drive. So then now you have to invest you have to invest in learning how to drive. You have to invest in having a car, having a car with car insurance. You understand? The whole gamut, And New York, at least our minimum wage is $15 an hour now. You move someplace else, their minimum wage is like $8 an hour. So you really need to have a skill if you're going to move someplace out of New York City. The places that have the higher cost of living, the minimum wage is higher. So like you could be an administrative assistant in New York and make $100,000 a year as an executive assistant or an administrative assistant. Maybe not administrative, but an executive assistant. Where can you live in Ohio as an assistant and make $100,000 a year? Please tell me. Okay.
You need to make $100,000 a year in Ohio to live well. That's the question. You got to think about that. That's not an apples to apples conversation because the every city, like the cost of living is different there. So
Oh,
if that's $100,000, and I don't know exactly, but if that $100,000 is the same as that $60,000 in Ohio, and you can make $60,000, then that's the same opportunity. If you could make $100,000, you have a great life. Versus,
that's not a great life in New York. That makes you middle class. We all know.
I'm talking about Ohio. I didn't say in New York.
But yes, but I've lived in other places. Like I lived in California.
But that's just as expensive, if not more, than New York because you require a car.
Yes, and that was always my argument. It's just as expensive as New York in terms of you have to have a car and the rent is comparable. You get more space. However, their minimum wage is lower and they don't pay as well. So to me, California is even worse. That's why they got more homeless people in California. All right.
Wow.
And I was just like, these people don't pay. Like at least in New York, an assistant can make $100,000. In California, they give you $12 an hour. I think they're giving you some money. You're like, that's not enough money when the rent is comparable. And that's what I'm saying.
No, I get what you're saying, and I think that LA is another one of those cities that it is a risk city. And when I say risk city, is that these are these cities where there's a lot of opportunities, and people go to these cities not necessarily planning to quote unquote be regular, right? You go to these cities for opportunities. You go to these cities to meet people. You go to these cities because you're not trying to make $12 an hour. $12 an hour is your temporary like thing to keep you going until you have your big break, right? So I think that when you use those cities as examples, like that's okay, it's cool, but it's not necessarily a. I think it's a risk. It's a choice. It's a choice to live in an expensive city, and we have to own that responsibility. And not that I don't think that we should all have access to the basics. We can. They don't have. We don't have to live in the cities that cost a crap ton of money.
That's true. I mean, but in Ohio, you said $60,000. In Ohio, they probably making 40 or 30. Like,
oh, yeah, I just use this as an example of saying maybe 60,000 in Ohio is the same as 100 in New York. But I didn't do this is anecdotal. I don't have any data to back that up.
They're making like 40, 30, $50,000. Because I think like what's the poverty like? I think it's like $27,000 if you make $27,000 or below $27,000 in America, you are considered below the poverty line. And because they're factoring the cities that cost a lot: New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Then you have the cities like, I don't know, North Dakotas, in North Dakota that are, I know you could probably get a whole house for $400 a month. I don't know how much, but I would imagine it's something really, really cheap,
I don't know. So listen, Rashida, what do you think the easy answer to food access is?
Oh, wow. Just revamping the distribution system. But is that an easy answer? The distribution system is the problem. I mean, it really is. Okay, there's actually a two-pronged approach to the easy answer. I'm sorry. It's not easy. There's the distribution system and there's land access.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's just not easy. Distribution and land access. The more access is, so like community gardens are important, being able to just use of space. I've seen where like in the suburbs, it's like, why we have to have lawns? What is this lawn doing for anyone? You know how much food you could grow? You know how many households you could feed with your lawn alone? I mean, just the whole distribution system is a problem.
I like lawns.
Lawns are useless. They are useless. They're a waste of land. It's pretty. A garden's pretty too. Yeah, and it serves both the purposes of beauty and feeding. But gardens are beautiful. You don't like gardens? You growing basil.
Yeah, but in my kitchen on top of my refrigerator, I might have you come over here and give me some tips. I'm not doing a good job.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there's no easy answer. I mean, the food deserts, how are you dealing with those? I mean, it's something that's been in existence for so long. It would take zoning changes, it would take land repurposing. That in urban areas, that's part of the problem. But here's another interesting thing I was looking at recently is that my son just went outside to play. Is that a lot of people are reconsidering where they live now because since COVID started, you can work from anywhere. So there is this theory that maybe people will start moving out of urban areas because the value of living in an urban area was to reduce your commute. And when you eliminate the commute, you can go live someplace else and still have that job and maybe have a better quality of life. And maybe have some land and grow a garden. I don't know. Easy answer. True. Who knows?
And not a basil trap on top of your refrigerator. Yes.
Yeah, we have to expand from we need to expand that holding. But it's an awesome start. I'm so happy that you're doing it.
Yes.
I mean,
Cool.
I lived that food desert life. Brandy knows. I sent her. I did a poem about it once. I did the poem when I moved to Trinidad and didn't have to live that life anymore. But I lived on the North Shore of Staten Island. So I hear now the mall is built by Staten Island Yankee Stadium and the ferry. There's a mall now, and probably they have some better, food options in the area. But back then, I remember you guys had your Trader Joe's conversation, and I remember when I was living there, there was this whole the Staten Island Advance they were appalled because Trader Joe's or Whole Foods said Staten Islanders were too dumb for their chain. Like there weren't enough college graduates per capita in the borough for them to put a Trader Joe's or Whole Foods there. Yeah. So I lived in the North Shore of Staten Island. There were some condos going up. The resident, the occupancy was really low though. So it really didn't bring a lot of people. And I had Western beef walking distance from me. And then they put a Key Food a little closer in the downstairs of the condo building. And that was it. So I was on Snap. And I lived quick walk to the ferry. So I'd get on the ferry, right? That's a 30-minute ride. And then I'd get on the downtown loop bus. So that's a free bus to go to the Whole Foods on Greenwich Street. And I'd shop and I'd feed my kids and let them play with the other kids and their nannies. And then I'd get back on the loop bus and come back and just whatever I could carry. And Fresh Direct wasn't coming to me at that point either. So
wow.
It's that food desert scenario is like you guys, we talked about this app, the TechCrunch article about the app. I'm not sure if they're solving the problem because it's not a problem of knowing where the food is. It's, how do you get to it? So if I have to pay for a bus or, put gas in my car, that adds to my food cost. If I need to go out of my walking distance area to get nourishment, it's really an unjust situation. It could be, it might have to be a zoning situation. It might have to be, when I heard the last discussion about, the Trader Joe's not wanting to be in certain neighborhoods, I thought to myself, but I used to swipe my SNAP card at Whole Foods. Are you not missing out on a whole market that you could have staying out of the hood? You could use SNAP at Whole Foods. You can use SNAP and get hot food at Whole Foods. You can't get hot food at the bodega, but you can get food from the hot bar at Whole Foods. I don't know why, but
not
you can.
anymore. You used to be able to.
Oh, they caught it. Wow.
No, they don't hot bar as much. COVID.
Oh, yeah.
COVID killed the hot bar.
I need to watch that episode. I saw that episode come up in my screen. Yeah, COVID killed the buffet. I need to watch that one. I'm the Easy Answer podcast man. I love you guys' work. You guys are doing great work.
Thank you. We love the work that you're doing too. Somebody has to be making sure that we maintain access, get food. It's such a basic. It's like we say, it's a right. It's not a privilege to have access to food.
I agree.
Yeah. It's a God-given birthright. It's a God-given birthright. If you look in the book of Genesis, that's the first thing he provided for us was food.
Yeah. Yeah, guys.
Word for it when it comes to the Bible, girl.
Yes, indeed. Cool. Well, I think this is a good place to end. Let that thought process kind of sink in. And we would love to hear in the comments, where you guys that are listening stand on this food access conversation. Is access to high quality, nourishing food, which is the definition of food, a privilege, or is it a right?
Because we realize now that food touches every aspect of our lives, right, Brandy?
Yes, it does. All right. Thanks for coming back and joining us, Rashida, at the Easy Answer podcast. Thanks for being our first super fan.
Yay, Rashida! We're gonna have to have you back, okay? The Rashida episode.
I need a T-shirt. I need an Easy Answer podcast T-shirt, please. the
everybody.
easy
Until next
answer.
time.
All
Yeah,
right.
see you later.